Well, thank you for joining us for our next admin update. We've been trying to get this out for the last few weeks, but it seems like every week has brought with it new information that we were just kind of waiting on and just kind of waiting on and just kind of waiting on. So thank you for your patience if you've been having questions. I appreciate the fact that you're waiting to hear all of these things at one time. I have six things on my list today. I'm going to try to keep them fairly short, but I would encourage you to make sure you check out all six, whether you're just clicking through or whether you're going to watch the whole thing at a time. I don't want to bury the lead, right? So I want to share the best news first, and then I'm going to give you a chance to do your happy dance wherever you're watching this. The first is that last night, so it's Wednesday when I'm recording this, last night, Tuesday night, our church council voted to put through the approved plans from the Gathering Responsibly team that will move us into step D, which will include some in-person worship. And so we're super fired up about that. I'll pause for your happy dance. My kids and wife particularly will be super embarrassed that I did that on camera, but there it is. I'm thrilled that we're opening back up. I've been waiting for this. In staff meetings and whatnot, my friends like to remind me that I said, let's hold off on Easter because we're going to be back right after Easter. I can just feel it. And they like to remind me that I was just about a year off on that. So just after Easter on the 11th is our date that we have in mind for gathering back together in person. Obviously, the plans that we were developing last fall to gather together, those still a lot of that stuff worked out. So a lot of those same practices and procedures will be in place to keep everybody safe. But times have changed a bit, including just Monday of this week, the CDC just released new guidance on what it means if you've been vaccinated. And so our plans are going to be changing as we go along. So just if it's helpful, don't think of this as flipping the switch back on, like turning the lights from off to on. It's going to be more of a switch that sort of brightens as you turn that dial. And so we're going to be turning the dial over the course of the spring. Obviously, we're going to continue to watch and make sure that we're being wise. But we believe the plans we have in place are not going to impede the ability, for instance, of our local schools from getting back. So we don't want to do anything as a church that's going to hinder that sort of progress. And so we believe that we can do both of these things together. Really exciting. More details to come on that. And I know, details are important, but I just want to share that good news with you guys today. And there'll be lots more there. And if you need to pause now for more happy dancing, you feel free to do just that. I'm going to move on to number 2, which is Holy Week. We have Holy Week and Easter that are coming up. A couple of things. The first is I'm excited about the plans we have in place for Holy Week. We're going to have a drive-through experience. It will not be exactly like our our Night in Bethlehem experience, but that same sort of concept. So it'll be an experiential opportunity for you to drive through and experience kind of the whole story of Holy Week. That is going to be on the evening of Palm Sunday. We've set up a lot of time to make sure that people can get through. We're trying to kind of do some of it in the daylight and some of it at night. We know that some of you would prefer only to drive in the daylight, so you can come earlier, and then that'll allow everybody else that likes maybe a darker setting, since most of the Holy Week story happens over the course of the evening, that perhaps that'll give you a better perspective on that. It'll be a very prayerful, experiential, and safe opportunity for you to experience Holy Week in a new sort of way. We're also going to leave all of the stations up differently throughout the week so that you can return whenever you'd like during the week, either to walk or to drive through, and to use each of those stations as a prayer location, kind of like the Stations of the Cross, if you're familiar with that. So really excited about those sorts of things. We're also going to have both on demand and live streamed Maundy Thursday or Holy Thursday and Good Friday experiences. I'm really excited about that. We've got lots of other information that's going to be coming up about Easter egg hunts and all that sort of thing, but we will have Easter morning worship. We're going to have a sunrise service on the front lawn, and that'll be an opportunity for those of you that feel comfortable to perhaps come and join us there in person. The remainder of worship for Easter will be online, live streamed like it has been, and yet we will also have communion offered later in the day. And if you've been able to come through and receive communion, I've never served communion when so many people are crying. It just really has been a beautiful opportunity to have people back for that experience. Again, if you haven't been through yet because you're afraid it's not safe enough, that's fine. Understand that, but please know that we're using individual cups and that we have created the safest way for you to come through. So it's not a common loaf and a common cup in the same sort of way that we normally do. We have those elements there. We think that's an important thing, but they're individualized cups. So if you have been waiting for that reason and not coming, please feel free to come by. We'll again have opportunities for you to register for that on Easter. Number 3 is just to catch you up on kind of where we are financially and what it looks like in terms of forming a budget for this year, for 2021. If this is you've been following along, this isn't sort of a new thing for you. You know that normally we begin looking at the year ahead in the year before. So in October and November of 2020, normally we would have been preparing for 2021. Because there was so much uncertainty that existed, particularly back in the summer when we would have started that work, we decided to enter into the new year using the same sort of budgetary mindset that we had in 2020 in terms of spending, and that we were going to push our work to projecting what the rest of the year would look like for us off into 2021. And so we've done that. And in January, we began receiving estimates of giving, which again just helps our finance team and leaders make wise and faithful estimates about what we can anticipate in terms of offering for the year. I will say we ended 2020 in a very strong position. Generosity was up, our spending was down. We had a lot of savings during the sort of COVID season. In addition to that, we were given a boost by the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, that served its purpose well last year and allowed us to get through some of those rougher months. All of that has now been forgiven, so we can celebrate that. It's a big victory. You can do another happy dance if you'd like. And so all that is great news and puts us in a great position coming into 2021. However, as we come into 2021, everything is a little bit different than it normally is. And one of the things that our finance team is really wrestling with is trying to make, again, wise and faithful estimates. Projecting our giving for the coming year is a little bit trickier. I can celebrate that the last time I checked, we had 18 new families that have chosen to join us as committed givers here in our congregation, which is a wonderful thing. Even in the midst of a pandemic, our family has been growing in all sorts of ways, so we have lots to celebrate there. There were also a number of folks that I think we would normally have expected to hear from that we didn't necessarily hear from, which is fine. There's a lot of uncertainty, not just for the church, but for many families in this year. And so the difficult part is just trying to make wise and faithful estimates. And that's what our teams are really wrestling with right now. I would say that I've been very, very pleased, again, with the faithfulness of our leaders who are helping kind of walk us through this process, how they have been making sure that we continue to do the ministry that is so vital, not only to and for our congregation, but as a congregation to and for our town, with our town. And so, I don't know, I'm really grateful, and in some ways, I would say I am inspired by the faithfulness of our leaders. And so, I do think, as we kind of look across the rest of 2021, where we are right now, as all these things are taking place, we hope to have a sort of a finalized budget by the end of the month to present to Church Council at their meeting in April, which is the second Tuesday of that month. I do anticipate that this year is just going to be a bit tighter than what we've kind of grown accustomed to. At this point in time, to me, that's nothing to worry about, but it's just a reality kind of where we are. I do have a lot of great hope for what the remainder of this year looks like, and again, so thankful to our leaders for the work that they're doing to help make sure that we're doing that as good and faithful stewards of the resources that God has blessed us with, so that we can continue to do the mission and ministry of our church. So that's number 3. Let's move on to number 4. Preschool is going very well. A really huge thank you to our teachers, our staff that are there making that happen. We have, a lot of you have been asking questions about the preschool. We have 12 classes and over 100 kids that have been meeting over the course of this spring so far. We are anticipating a full slate of classes, so that's not... we normally have more than 12 classes, but we are anticipating a full slate in the fall, and so we're really excited about that. Thankful to, again, all the teachers, to Amanda Rackley, to Elizabeth Johnson, and to Diane Chapman, who have all been working diligently on that, as well as Emily Mountford and the whole preschool committee who've been working to make sure that stays open and stays open well. Number five is some of the things that have happened in the United Methodist Church or are happening. If those are things that you follow regularly, you probably already know what's going on. If not, you maybe saw a headline pop up here or there. The headlines that have come about in the last week particularly, they they were not surprising. It wasn't surprising information to me. I have gotten enough questions to recognize that it did catch some folks off guard. None of the things that I saw happen last week seemed to me to be really new news. The only new news was that the General Conference, which is the decision-making body of our worldwide United Methodist Church, they had decided to push the conference from last year to this year. Last year was the quadrennium, so every 4 years we meet. They decided to push that off until 2021. They postponed it, and they just decided to postpone that again. It's helpful to remember that when we gather, it's not just from pastors and lay folks, lay representatives in the United States, but that really is, it's a worldwide denomination, which means time zones become very difficult, technology becomes very difficult, access to opportunities for vaccinations and things like that become very difficult, travel restrictions are still in place. And so it just didn't seem like it was going to be particularly fair for us to get together and have a conversation, with only half of the church there. That just doesn't seem the right thing to do. And so they pushed that off for another year, much to the dismay of some, which I understand. Back at the beginning of 2020, there was a proposal that came from a group of leaders in the United Methodist Church. They were not officially asked to do this work, but they had done this work together. And they came up with what's called the Protocol for Reconciliation and Grace Through Separation, which is a proposal to allow United Methodist churches who desire to leave our denomination and to go on to a different denomination, and there are a couple different provisions in there for that, to do so with, again, with reconciliation and grace being the goal of that. And so that proposal still seems to be the one that has gained the most support from the most people, and so the question is just, when does that come up? I think some people would really have liked to see us go ahead and talk about that this year. We're going to have opportunities coming up as a congregation to talk more and more about that and what that means. Many of the details are still sort of exist up in the land of theory, and so we'll have more concrete conversations as we go along. But much of that information was just represented last week in some headlines. I do think you can be praying for our denomination as well in the midst of all the things that we're up against. That postponement, I know, has caused a lot of folks grief, so we'll be praying for them as well. Finally, I would just like to invite you in that spirit of prayer to pray for the leaders of our church. We've got all sorts of leaders doing all sorts of things. So just as an example, it takes about 30 folks on Sunday morning to run the cameras and to run the stream and to sing on the platform and to lead us in hymns and to play the drums and to do all the things that you don't necessarily see on the other side of the camera. And I'm just really grateful for the ways that people have stepped up. Many of them are learning to do things for the first time, and they've been so willing not just to learn new things, but to try to learn them at a level so that they can teach others as we get back to some in-person opportunities, so that they can help train sort of the next rung of leaders there. And particularly, one of the things that we're trying a little differently this year is that once a month we're pulling together all the chairs of our standing administrative committees so that they can work together to make sure our church is well aligned, humming, and is working well together. And I've just seen beautiful work already come through that team. I'm so thankful for them. And so I would really invite you to be praying for those folks, as well as all of the teams, the committees, the volunteers, everyone who's been making church happen. A lot has gone on in the past 12 years. Yes, a lot has gone on in the past 12 years. A lot has gone on in the past 12 months that are happening behind the scenes. Again, sometimes I think it feels to us like church is on pause because our Sunday morning worship experience in person is on pause. But that one thing, our Sunday morning worship experience, is not the wholeness of our church. And really, really wonderful and beautiful things have been taking place over the course of the last 12 months. And so I want to celebrate their work. I want to thank them for that, their diligence there. And I want to invite you to continue to pray for everyone. If it's helpful, all of our leaders on all of our teams have been reading through Ephesians together, the book of Ephesians together. And we've been praying that prayer together that's right there in Ephesians. And so I want to invite us to pray that prayer together right now. The idea is that our whole church, I left the camera. Our idea is that our whole church, all of our leadership, is praying in one direction. And so I invite you to join me as we pray together now in one direction with all the leaders of our church. For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth takes its name. I pray that according to the riches of his glory he may grant you, that you may be strengthened in your inner being with power through his Spirit, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, as you are being rooted and grounded in love. I pray that you may have the power to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. And now to him who by the power at work within us is able to accomplish abundantly far more than all we can ask or imagine, to him be glory in the church and in Jesus Christ to all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.